Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. If we could please stand for a moment of silent reflection and remain standing for O Canada. Thank you. Thank you. Members of council, you've had a chance to look at items on the agenda. Is there any conflict of interest? Seeing none, that'll be noted. Could we have a motion to move the minutes of the regular meeting held January 12th, 2021 and the closed meeting of council held January 19th, 2021 be adopted as presented? Councillor Desjardins and Councillor Edicio Spagnolo, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Mayor's comments. Just a quick thank you to everyone. Finally, the cases are coming down. People have been doing what they should be doing. Everybody did their part to help. Sadly, there's some more deaths, but the cases are coming down. So
got it.
We're heading in the right direction. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, we got it, Rob.
Delegations. We have a request for always stop control at Donlin and Hindi. Mr. Beggs, do you want to?
Good evening, members of council. Just wanted to go through a little bit of a background of the request before you tonight. We received a formal petition requesting four-way stop at the intersection of Donlin and Hindi. And we had a chance to review the intersection, and based on some data that we have had from others, four-way stop requests and investigations, as well as investigation on at this location, it is recommended that we do not proceed with four-way stop at this location, as it's not warranted through our criteria. And I'm available for any questions if there are any after the delegates speak.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Beggs. Do we have Bekim Merdita here as a delegate?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. I don't see you, but maybe that's just not your camera. So if you're ready to go, I believe you've been instructed there's a 5-minute timeline.
Yes, and I won't need all 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Beggs as well. But reason for me joining you was, I looked over the petition. This is something that's been ongoing for, roughly 5-6 years now. The Herdman and Donlon streets were built on the old Herdman farm. And since that time, we've added a lot of, houses, a lot of people to the neighborhood, but most of all, we've added a lot of children to this neighborhood. The east-west direction on the Donlon Street, where the stop sign is being proposed, has been a point of contention for our entire neighborhood for years on end now. It's a place of fear for parents. It's also a bus stop for many children as well. And I realized that, based on standard criteria, it may not exactly meet the town's standards. However, I thought it was important to bring forth because for whatever reason, folks keep coming to me because we run a neighborhood Facebook group asking if something can be done about this and who can help us out. Our neighbors have offered to pay for it. So if it's a matter of expense, it's no issue. It's more of a matter of town approval, going through the right channels to do it the right way. Because we have seen, for those of us who live here, many, many near accidents, 0 actual accidents, but many were close. And if anyone else lives here, anyone else on council is driven through this neighborhood and your kids play here, I assure you, you'd be on our side of it. So thank you for your consideration, and anything the town can do to help us out, we would greatly appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Council's pleasure. Councilor Akpata.
Mr. Beggs, for my consumption, could you explain the criteria that led to the recommendation, sir, please?
Certainly. For four-way stop consideration, there are basically 3 considerations to look at for the warrant. One is traffic volume, one is sight lines, and one are accidents. In this case, for traffic volumes, we didn't go to the expense of having an engineer review and count the cars. We based it on some other intersections that we have reviewed in the past, and the fact that this intersection would have a lower volume than what we've already reviewed. And since in other cases in the town that we have reviewed, we haven't even come close to the minimum volume required to warrant the 4-way stop, it can be assumed that in this case we would have the same case. The second warrant for sight lines, in this case you have a straight section of road with, it's relatively new and not even any major trees or anything else in the way for sight lines. So sight lines are not a concern as well. And the third warrant that's required is that we review accidents. And in this case, we went back actually 5 years through the Town of LaSalle Police, and there have been 0 accidents at the intersection in those 5 years. So based on those criterias, there would need to be 2 out of the 3 that would be a positive warrant, and being that 2 of them 100% are no's, and the traffic volume is very likely to be a no. That's where we came up with the recommendation to not proceed. And just for some information as well, the way that it's reviewed with the warrants is something that was adopted by council with our corridor management plan, and that's been in place for a number of years, and that's where we come up with the criteria for the warrant.
Thank you, sir. That answers my question, Your Worship.
Councilor Carrick, then Councilor Renault.
All right, thank you, thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of quick notes. So based on the warrants and council's policy, so would this be considered stuff that other municipalities and across the province, et cetera, best practice consistently? Is that where we're getting this from for the most part, a lot of it?
Yeah, that would be correct. This is very typical of how a 4-way stop warrant would be looked at across the province.
Okay, so then having said that, now if we were to put a 4-way stop here, that would open up a whole other area for other areas that don't meet warrants. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yep, that's definitely something we should consider with this. If we do go ahead with putting in a 4-way stop here, it would open up the door for other locations if they don't meet the criteria as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Renault.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Murdita for bringing this to council's attention. We get quite a few, or at least I see quite a few requests come through for 4-way stops or for more safety in our neighborhoods. And we all definitely want more safety in our neighborhoods. We want the cars to slow down. We want our kids safe. That being said, we have not just our own policies, but we have the official Ontario traffic manual, that manual that allows us to use pure data and to go by best practices. Like my colleague, Mr. Carrick, was asking about, if we were to move forward with one that's not warranted and to just do it because it may be safer, it opens up many people to ask for the same thing. And then you start to get into problems with other corners and other areas when the traffic gets changed. So as much as I appreciate wanting to keep people safer, in this case, I'm afraid we're going to have to, or I personally will be denying the request, supporting the report by Mr. Beggs. But I just want you to know that we do appreciate you coming forward with this.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Through you to either Mr. Beggs or Mr. Mara, if we were to decline this as of right now, just based on the information, it obviously doesn't meet the requirements. Is this something we keep on our radar for future years as the intersections get busier? Is it something we revisit? How does that work? Just since these are always brought to our attention, I just wonder if after voted, if it's something we can revisit if needed.
We have Mr. Mara wanting to take that one.
Yeah, certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly as areas continue to develop, as more houses get into areas, that's when you start to see the traffic volumes start to creep up, and it may warrant those things at those times. So certainly there is no set timeline of when these get reviewed, but certainly as development continues to occur out in the Victory States area and potentially other areas out there, we could potentially come back and revisit these from any given time. And certainly, again, there's always that opportunity if it meets these warrants to install the always stop.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Riccio Spagnolo.
Thank you, through you. Just a question, if we were to deny this, is there an option to put a speed bump to control the traffic calming and for safety for the children?
Mr. Mara.
That was one of the items that I was going to bring up in closing, pending how this continued to progress. Certainly, we have a traffic calming policy. If the requester would like to pursue it through traffic calming, the policy, and see how that fits. Again, we have a number of warrants within the traffic calming policy to be met in order to put in speed bumps, permanent speed bumps. So certainly, pending what happens tonight, if the requester wants to explore those options, he can make contact with Mr. Beggs or myself, and we will give him information on how to initiate that process through the traffic calming. And then we would run it through that policy as well to see if anything is warranted with respect to traffic calming.
Seeing no other questions. Oh, Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through you. I was just going to say thank you, Peter. I was going to ask the same question, if there isn't something else that we can do to slow the traffic down or make the neighborhood just a little bit safer, since it doesn't meet any of the warrants. Mr. Medita, if you can look at some of those options, that would probably help your neighborhood as well. So I would make the motion to go ahead with the recommendation that it not go forward as a four-way stop.
Moved by Councillor Desjardins. Supported by Councillor Renaud. All in favor? That carries. Opposed, if any? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Medita, for your comments. And I think you know, if you want to move forward with the speed bump, how to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, item 2, alley closing. Mr. Dedalt, if you want to lead with that one, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of council. The report before you tonight is with respect to alley R2. As I'll just briefly go over it, as the report is fairly self-explanatory. In this case, we did the usual process where we did a survey to see what existed in the alley. And in this situation, there is a metal fence that runs all the way about a foot short of the northern limits of the alley, where is the requester's property. And in this situation, I should note that this is with respect to half of the alley. And when it was initially closed, the southern half was added to the lots as part of a subdivision development. And then this northern half has remained closed, but otherwise in the town's ownership since that time. Due to the fact that there is a fence there, that's how we have recommended that the alley is distributed. If you turn to figure 3 on page, I believe it's 31, but I will double check of the agenda. Yeah, page 31, which is figure 3. There's a distribution plan. So you'll see there is the thin band across the northerly portion there that's in yellow, and that's what will be going, that we recommend goes to the north to the Mancinis, who are here tonight as delegates. And then the green portion goes to the individuals to the south, the Bash, and the orange one goes south to the Wagner family, who I believe they are also on as delegates tonight. As per the policy, where there's a fence, that's where we kind of draw the line in terms of how we wish to distribute property. So that's what we sent out, and this has been requested to come before you tonight by the Mancinis, which is their right under the policy. So as my understanding, that they have 10 minutes from the clerk's office to present their matter before you tonight, following which, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those further or go on with any clarifications as needed.
Okay, thank you, our solicitor.
Oh,
yes,
sorry,
go
if
ahead.
I could just add one more thing. After that, as per the policy as well, if there is any indication from council that you wish to amend the recommendation, I believe the Wagners are here as delegates, and it would be the time for them to speak as well.
Okay, thank you. So the way I understand it, Mr. and Mrs. Mancini, you're each allotted 5 minutes. And I don't see anybody there yet. Who's going to go first?
I will go first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mancini.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor, councilors and administration, thank you for having us. We are requesting to be able to purchase parts of 14 and 15 in their entirety according to reference plan 12R 20006. The property on Morton Drive, backing onto 1740 and 1730 Lansdowne, has never been abandoned, nor is it orphaned. The taxes always have been paid. The property is always well maintained. As you can see on page 49, a picture that was submitted by the Wagners, on the right side of the pool house, over the fence, you can see that the property is well maintained. Fences in question were not in existence prior to the reference plan being drafted. If the alley is now split up again and conveyed to multiple owners, a new reference plan to break up Part 14 must be prepared and registered, which has a cost. 1740 Lansdowne, possession 2011. There's a letter, Exhibit 1 is a letter from a realtor verifying there was no fence nor pool on the property at the time of purchase. Letter stating that the Wagners wanted to confirm the dimensions of the property prior to the completion of the purchase. 1730 Lansdowne, built in 212, no pool, no fence at the time of purchase. Pool installed in May 2020. Large opening in the rear yard. You can see Exhibit 5 and 6 to accommodate large machinery to install an in-ground pool. No permission was given to go over our property, and you can see from Exhibit 5 and 6. When I asked Mr. DeBosch why he had his fence at the location, he stated because he did, referring and pointing to the Wagner's home. Both parties had visible steel bars that are still visible today. The neighbors at 1720 Lansdowne, Exhibit 4, just west of 1730 Lansdowne, has this fence in its proper place. The Limitations Act of Ontario prevents any claims of occupants on municipal land. The owners of 1740 and 1730 Lansdowne were already in possession of half their alley and built fences on land they did not own. If these fences are moved to their proper location, owners of 1740 and 1730 Lansdowne have no negative impacts. They still have a pool, they still have their patio, they still have their landscaping, they still have their outbuildings and their fence. If fences, their enjoyment of their property will not change. Again, their enjoyment of their properties will not change. If fences are not moved, the parties that will be hurt are ourselves and further property owners of Morton Drive. It is to our understanding, every municipality, including the town of LaSalle, have asked homeowners to take down fences or move them to their proper location. In closing, we are proposing to resolve this problem. We are willing to professionally move the fences in question to their proper location at our cost. We want to do our part to be fair to everyone, and we are looking for a resolution that is fair to us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Mrs. Mancini?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Could you hear us? Does
Yes.
the sound good?
It was perfect. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, it's to my understanding that the alley closing policy will be reviewed this May 2021, which is just 4 months from now, according to the paperwork that I have. Maybe you can just verify that with Mr. DeDault.
We'll do that after you're finished, please.
Okay. All right. So the alley in question has already been closed. It's been surveyed. There's a reference plan that's been prepared and it's been registered as Plan 12R 20006, all at our cost, along with our partner. All the costs were shared with the partnership on Lansdowne Avenue. Okay, the alley was laid out according to the town's specifications. The town told us to draw the line down the middle of the alley, prepare part 14, and they told us exactly how to survey it and how to split it up. We did exactly what the town asked. So this was done as per the town's instructions. Clearly, the town had intentions to sell the parts to the Morton Drive owners, and not the Lansdowne owners. Okay, referring to the survey, we've had it resurveyed. We did that December 21st, 2020, to make sure there was nothing at all on the property, and there are no permanent structures on the property, part 14. Only the fence encroachment, which can be easily moved. And as my husband said, they've already opened up a large part of it. It's very easy to move it. And I believe that 1740 as well has gates in the back that are not going to be hard to move. Anyways, going back to the survey. Now, when we submitted our survey, we submitted the 11 by 17 inch survey, but of course, when it went onto the computer, it was much smaller. It's been reduced. So it's difficult to see where it says the surveyor's real property report. So that would be on Exhibit 7, and it's at the right side of the survey. And it states there, it talks about the metal fence, and it states, and I'm quoting, all other pool structures, concrete decks and sheds are clear of the land shown as part 14 on Plan 12R-20006. That's a direct quote from the surveyor. Another quote from the surveyor, Iron survey monuments mark or witness all corners of the parcel. All right, and that is as of 2020. So the markers are still there. The steel survey bars are still there. They were definitely there when they put their fences up, and they are still there today. And they were visible in 2011, and they were visible in 2012 when those fences went up, or afterwards, shortly afterwards. Okay, so let's go to Exhibit 8, which is the map. I'd like to speak to that as well. That is a map that shows the effect of the loss of the alley on Morton Drive. The lots on Morton Drive with the alley are 117 feet deep. Without the alley, they are 110 feet deep. The 110-foot depths adversely affect the backyards and the front yards, actually. The pool installation is adversely affected. Backyard patios, landscaping, recreation areas, rear yard drainage, all affected by the depth of the lots. The depth of the lot reduces the square footage of the home to be built on the property due to the fact that there are lot coverage requirements and front and rear yard requirements. So the fact that the lots are 110 feet deep instead of 117 greatly affects us. Not only that, if the people are allowed to keep the double alley, it would be very poor planning for the town of LaSalle because it would create irregular jags in the backyards of the property on Morton. There'd be no continuity, no straight back line with the alleys. It creates an inconsistent backyard for many of the properties. For example, in some of the lots, the depths would be 110 feet on one side of the lot and 117 feet on the other side of the lot. There's a tremendous adverse impact on the property on Morton Drive, and it would be very unfair to us as owners and to anybody else who bought the property later to build their own homes, as we want to build our home as well there. All alley situations are different. There's a dangerous precedent in the town of LaSalle to allow a fence that was illegally installed on town land, to allow it to stay in a situation whereby the landowners knew or should have known where boundaries were. They have clearly and knowingly violated bylaw number 6807 of the town of LaSalle. We are again asking for fairness and reiterate that we will pay to professionally move the fences.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Mancini.
Thank you.
Mr. Dudall, can you answer a couple comments she brought up?
I mean, there's several there. I'm not sure if maybe we want to do, if council wants to ask questions about particular ones, then I can touch on that if you want to do it that way. I'm fine either way, but just to direct the conversation, I guess.
We can do that. We'll bring it to council first. Well, let me say this, Mr. Dudall, why don't you answer some of the points?
Sure.
So that might answer some of council's questions.
Okay, certainly. So just going in chronological order as it was presented, the first item mentioned was the cost of a new reference plan to distribute the alley. Certainly that is something that is the case in every alley that we're doing right now, in terms of every single one that we've done so far, whether they've been reviewed or not reviewed, we have to create those parts so we can distribute and get that out of the town's name. So that's nothing that's out of the usual course of business. And for this particular one, I think the cost, we're talking about roughly $2,000. So it's well within the usual budget in terms of what we typically see with these alleys and what we would come across in any given year. So that is something that's covered with the policy and the policy's budget. In terms of people verifying via surveys and following the survey bars and whatnot. Ideally, yes, that's where we wish that was the case and everyone followed where the lot lines were. But as council is aware, and just from the practical aspect of why we have this alley program and the policy in place, is because we are well aware that there's fences that are all over the maps through our alleys. Some even go beyond the alleys into the neighboring properties we've seen. So there's all, I mean, yes, ideally we would prefer that people build up their lot line and that's it. In the alley, we're all clear. If it was, they'd be split 50-50 and we wouldn't have to come before you guys tonight. So that's the reality of it in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. And that's why the policy itself was created, where there was realistically the two options that we brought back to you in May of 2019, which was option one was to do what we're doing now. And we recognize what's in there in terms of structures, be they fences, sheds, pools, etc. And we divide around them. And that's what we've been doing. Or the alternative was that anything in every alley, we just clear line down both sides, take everything out from either side, whether it's sheds, pools, fences, you name it. Now it's empty and we can divide half and half. So those were the two options, and that's why we're following the policy that was adopted at that time. There was a comment that the town of LaSalle forces people to remove fences. That's something I'm not aware of, that we've done that in the past. So I'm not sure where that comes from.
To that? Can I
Let
speak to
Mr.
that?
Duvall finish, and then if there's a question directed to you or Mr.
right.
Mancini,
Yep.
we'll allow that. Thank you.
I mean, that's certainly that. As far as since I've been employed with the town, I haven't been involved in anything that's required anyone to remove a fence, particularly under the alley policy. I mean, the one time that or the two times I guess that we have under the policy, one was a gate, a movable gate. And the second time that's where the fence, if you'll recall, that's one of the examples where it was built beyond the alley onto the neighboring property. And it was also, I think, 8 or 9 feet high. So it violated the fence height bylaw. So that fence was going to be coming down anyway. So those are the two instances that we've had fences removed, but otherwise, and in the second case, I don't believe that was even a fence. So I'm not sure about that point in particular. With respect to the policy review date, that is just the common procedure. In our clerk's department, they track any council approved policies and they're either reviewed either every year or every 2 years. So that's just the standard. It's coming up in May because we adopted it May 2019. So that's not anything out of the ordinary. That's just the usual course of business. I don't know how often policies get changed, but again, unless something comes up that prompts that change, they are usually renewed and they go forward for 2 more years. I think those are the main points that were brought up in terms of the depths of lots. Certainly there is, I'm aware of, there's many lots in the town that are 110 feet deep. Even I think even standard some subdivisions, you can go 60 feet frontage or 50 foot frontage by 100 feet deep. So 110 foot depth is not out of the ordinary. Yes, everyone would like an extra 7 feet, and who wouldn't? So I understand the point in terms of how the adverse effect that it would have, but there's certainly development. It's not taking away the development potential of those lots on the grander scale of things. So I think that's kind of the high points. If you have any further questions that you wish me to dig into, I'd be happy to address.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dudal. Maybe at this time I'll ask, I see Mrs. Wagner signed in. Would you like to speak, Mrs. Wagner?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, Mr. Wagner, I take it? Yes, we can.
Yes, actually, sorry about that. I apologize. I do not have video. Good evening, everyone. I am Brett Wagner, the owner of 1740 Lansdowne, and I do support the recommendation of the administration in this matter. We moved into the property back in 2011, as Mr. Mancini says. We lived there for 1.5 years when we did decide to install a pool. We had a survey that showed that the pool was, or the alley, the north side was in fact closed, the north half of this alley. It was landlocked. It has no street access. We also noticed that the north half of the alley was not maintained in any way. Certainly the town of LaSalle would not be getting in there to maintain it. Just the access wasn't there. So with a new fence and access to the north half of that alley would be blocked for us with the fence. And while still being very visible from our backyard, we felt that we really had no choice to put a fence on the abandoned property in order to maintain access for maintenance. It was interesting for me to hear Mr. Mancini say that he maintained the property. That picture he was referring to of the well-maintained Mancini property in the background was actually maintained by my next door neighbor on the opposite side of me here to the east. This has been a problem for us since we moved in there as the back Mancini property maintenance. Our concern is that if the fence is moved, that nobody will maintain this property, including the Mancinis, who would be the new owner. Having lived in our house for almost 10 years, we have seen how the property behind us has not been maintained. Between 2011 and 18, there were many years when absolutely nothing was done to the property. Weeds would be 3 foot tall, brush so thick that you could not see the adjacent street Morton through our backyard. Eventually, a family of coyotes made a den in this property. Coyotes attacked one of the neighbor's dogs. There were many complaints, I assume. I didn't verify this, but they were made to the town regarding the lack of maintenance on the Mancini property. Then in 2018, the Mancini property was cleared out. It took about a week. And since then, a contractor regularly comes in about once per month to mow the weeds. To me, once a month is not really acceptable. I'm sure nobody on council that has grass in their front yard would mow it once a month. If I move this fence, if the fence is moved, I will not be able to maintain this myself, this property, because I will not have access. People who have tried to access in the past have actually had the police called on them. And that was a surprise to me myself, actually. We found that we cannot trust Mr. Mancini to maintain the property, judging on the past experience and the amount of fiction he's included in his submission to council here. I find Mr. Mancini's submission is actually very disappointing, and I'd really rather not talk anymore about it. I just wish that council would follow the recommendation of administration at this time, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. At this time, we'll go to council. Deputy Mayor Milosh.
Thank you. Through you to Dominic. I know in our alley policy, we talk about permanent structures. Where do metal fences fall on permanent structures?
So we, in terms of the policy, fences is one of the items that we identified within the policy itself. So that is one of the exceptions that we will follow. If there's a fence, we're not in the business of knocking down fences.
Okay, because normally following our policy has done well for us, and we've put it in place for a reason. My main issue with what we've recommended tonight is what happens to the lots behind it. So when I look at the figure 3, we're showing that technically 4 lots, but I guess 2 building lots would be affected, as their backyard would be irregular now and would have fence lines running through the middle and then jutting out through the corner. Where I know our policy before was always to have a nice straight line down the back, keeping everything maintained and easy to take care of. So when I look at this proposal that's put in front of us, that's the only thing that really stands out to me, is we're not following what we had wanted before, which was those straight lines across. I appreciate the Wagner and Tabash family wanting to keep their portion that they've been able to use for several years now. However, when I look at those lots and what the impact's going to be on the back side of it, that is a big concern for me, especially for development and knowing that area is going to be developed. I thought that we had something in place because of that. Do we not?
And I know that I see Kevin popping on here. I know there's consideration given to how lots are formed. I think it's called lot form, and sometimes if there is, say, easements or if there's drains in the alley or whatnot, we do our best to maintain that straight line. But there has been ones, even one of the last one that actually changed the alley is kind of on a slope now because of the way hydro poles are in that particular instance. So yes, ideally we keep the straight line, but there is precedent for it being on having jogs or some plants, and I'll let Kevin speak more to that.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
No, I think Mr. Dadal's covered that. Wherever we can, we will try and keep uniform lines, because wherever that's possible, obviously that's better for both sides of the street. But we also adhere to the policy and we follow fences, structures, and when those come into play, those generally take precedent, and we follow the policy and leave those fence lines in place. If we have the opportunity to create regular lot lines, we will certainly try and do that wherever possible.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. I think that's my only question right now. Except for me, it's just that concern of our equal lot lines that we were trying to do before. And I have a problem with the way it's laid out.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Councillor Desjardins. You're muted.
Is that better? Thank
Yes.
you. I'm not sure who to put this through. I'm going to start with you. My question is actually to all three families who built pools on property that really wasn't there, that went into the alley. And my question to Mr. and Mrs. Mancini, if you knew that this was going on, why did you not approach the town about buying the alley back in 2011, 2012?
Mr. and Mrs. Mancini, you're muted. No, you're still muted. Should be in the bottom left. There's a mute button. If you can click on that, you should unmute.
Mute?
There you go.
Is that
All
better?
good.
Okay. We did not know this was going on because there's a row of trees there. It's very, very difficult to see what is going on in the yards of Lansdowne Avenue because there's a lot of trees on the side there. And so we did not see those pools going in at the time in 2011 and 2012.
Councillor Desjardins, does that answer your question?
Sort of, because you've also included pictures of damage that was done to the lots with the equipment that was going through. I would have been myself, I guess, looking to find out where that where those trails were going and ask the people why the fences and why the work was going in the way it was going in.
That was in 2020.
2020.
That was last May, that pool that went in.
And I just wanted to reiterate, I drive by Morton. I go through Morton, off Malden Road to Morton. I make a left on McNabb. I look at everything that's going on. At the time, there were only two fences, 1740 and 1730 Lansdowne, with the exception of the fence that's closest to Malden Road. It is very, very difficult from, unless you walk the entire property on all occasions, it's very difficult to try to figure out what's going on behind those row of trees. Now, I'd also like to reiterate that my man that cuts the lawn, he cuts it, if it rains, he cuts it every 2 weeks. He uses the lawnmower behind, a push mower behind the trees. He uses a push mower to even cut the ditch and a riding mower to cut the lawn. It is a very, very difficult. The two houses in question are in hiding behind the trees.
And the picture there is from 2020. That's when 1730 put their pool in, May of last year.
Okay.
We did not have any pictures of when it was put in 2011. We couldn't see it because of the trees.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Desjardins, that answers your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay. We'll go with Councillor Carrick, then Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm similar lines with the deputy mayor there as far as a lot's not being consistent. I get, and I understand that we went through the policy. We did it in 2019. I actually supported the policy at the time. I agree we need a review, and it can't come quick enough because not being able to do 50-50 split and there's no permanent structures, it's almost like we're rewarding people that take property that's not theirs or use property that's not theirs. So it really, it's really difficult to not do a 50-50 split here. But as again, I would rather refer this until May, until we come up with a new policy. That's my feelings. And I agree with Chris or the deputy mayor that it really doesn't make it consistent, and half and half, 50-50, move the fences, whatever, that would be fine with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Councillor Reno. Councillor Reno, you're still muted. You're muted. There you go.
Sure. So, you know, I had a chance to look at this on the weekend and all the lines and things like that. And you know, a lot of times people say to me, what would you do if this was your backyard? What would you do if something like this was happening? So when we built our house, it backed onto someone else's property. And we put the fence right on the lot line where it belonged. Now, right now, it's my understanding that there's some town-owned property behind me. And if I was to follow the same reasoning as Mr. Wagner, it doesn't get cut by the town. It's been left to naturalize. And so if I was to go back there and move my fence 15, 20 feet, I could control it a lot better than I do now. But I don't think that's the right answer, that we can start telling people to move their fences onto town property so that they can control the weeds. You know, especially in a case like this where you have two privately owned properties, I think it sets a dangerous precedent moving forward, that you're going to move your lot line so that you can control weeds. We have bylaws to control weeds. We have bylaw officers you can call, and we can control this through the town. So I don't really go for that argument in general. But what I will say is that it's my understanding that the Mancinis were actually the owners of all these properties at one point. And at one point they had that alley closed properly, and they had those beacons put in so that we know where the lot lines are. And I think it's only fair to go right down the middle. I don't think, I understand we have a policy, and I understand it's going to be reviewed. I agree with Councillor Carrick. You know, we maybe, now that we've had a year where we've seen some trouble here and there, we have an opportunity to look at that again. But right now, I feel that I can't go with administration's recommendation of allowing that fence to stay there. And I do appreciate the Mancini's offer to have it professionally moved, as that does not put any more cost on the town of LaSalle. So that's the way I will be voting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. Councillor Akpata.
Your Worship, I understand what my colleague, Councillor Carrick and Councillor Renner have said. I also understand the importance of our policies, Your Worship. And since this policy is up for renewal, and perhaps the CAO can give me some direction, if we were to stand this matter down until after the review of the policy, Your Worship, I don't like to run counter to our policies. And if the policy needs to be reviewed and we could do something that aligns with the feelings that I've heard expressed, maybe that might be a reasonable outcome. Like I said, we do have a policy, sir, and I understand and I agree with what my colleague, Mr. Reno, just said as well. If I can get some direction from the CAO, sir.
Mr. Militia.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, if the position of council is that they would like the policy reviewed and this matter deferred until that time, certainly we can take that direction. I would suggest that if that is in fact the direction of council to review the policy, that we do that perhaps prior to the May normal review date, in order that we have, because we do have a number of these alley closings in the queue at this point, and the longer we defer on again, I don't want to, there are a number, unfortunately, part of the policy, and not unfortunately, but part of the policy is that there is this opportunity for folks that are trying to remedy an alley situation to come before council. We do have other situations. Again, unfortunately, these are the ones that come to council. There are a number of alley closes that don't come to council because they just follow the policy and people are satisfied with the result and things go on. But if in fact this is the direction of council, I would suggest that we do defer this item along with every other alley closing item that we have on the go at this point, and review the policy as quickly as we can, and then come back to council with that. So that would be my suggestion if that is in fact where council wants to land on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much, Mr. Militia. You've clarified my question, sir.
Councillor Licio Spagnolo.
I would like to make a motion to defer this until we can discuss this in May for our new policy.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor of the motion? Oh, Mr. Militia.
I just want to confirm that is it the intention of the motion that we wait until May to review the policy, or would you like us to take it sooner? Again, I just want to make sure that we have it correct for the minutes.
Councillor Licio.
I would like to be done sooner if possible, just so, as you said, that there were a lot of alley closings in the queue. So the sooner the better if possible. Thank you.
Are you okay with that, Mr. Militia? All right. So we have a mover and a seconder. All in favor of defer until as soon as possible? Opposed, if any? We have one opposed. That carries. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Mr. Wagner and Mr. and Mrs. Mancini, thank you. We have no reports or correspondence. Information to be received. Summary of reports to council. The reports dated January 26, 2021 be received. Councillor Reno and Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. We have 4 bylaws on all 4 readings. Oh, Councillor Reno, do you have a question?
Sorry, Your Worship, my space bar is not working that well tonight. I had a question about the reports to council for Mr. Militia. Just in relation to the cannabis discussion, it's been a little while since it was brought up, and we did talk about reviewing it in the fall when it made the full year. Are we getting close on that one? I have been sending people your way that have had questions and want opportunities and things like that. But at this point, I'm just I can't continue to tell them we're looking at the fall when the fall is past.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Councillor Reno. We are looking at that internally. Again, Mr. Slaney and I are looking at what the best practices are here locally in the region, as well as a few beyond. So we have done some of the background work, and we'll be preparing a report to council. I suspect that it may be on the February, the second meeting in February agenda, and we'll go forward from there. Unfortunately, COVID's kind of taken the front headlines for most things, but again, we do intend on bringing that forward to council in the next few meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. That is very much appreciated by many.
Okay, back to bylaws. We have 4 bylaws on all 3 readings. Councillor Reno and Councillor Licio Spagnolo, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Council questions. Councillor Ekpata.
Through you to Mr. Militia, the last time we were together, sir, you clarified a question about our facilities for COVID and the use of them. Have you heard anything from the task force, or has anyone reached out to you after we made that public declaration that we were ready and willing to assist, sir?
Thank you, Councillor Akpata. We have met again. We, as the town of LaSalle, as well as all other municipalities here in Essex County, have an ongoing weekly meeting with the health unit, who is charged with the vaccine distribution. We meet generally towards the end of the week, barring any emergencies. But we have all confirmed that we are all willing to assist. I believe that a draft plan has been submitted to the province as well as to the board of the health unit in terms of what actions are to be taken. So as that plan becomes finalized, we will get some more details in terms of the when and the how and I guess the when and the how, more importantly, of how we will be involved with the vaccine distribution. Again, it is, as you can imagine, a very complex process to vaccinate the better part of 350 people within this region. Again, one of the complicating factors, and most recently we've gotten some not the greatest news, I guess would be the best way to describe it, with respect to the vaccine supply. And much of the planning that is going on at this point in time is dependent on the vaccine supply and the delivery dates on those. So as those become more firm, we expect that our planning will become more firm as well. And we will hopefully, again, my anticipation is that sometime in early March, we should have some more concrete details to share with council and the community in terms of how this is going to be rolled out and how it affects our facilities.
A supplemental to Mr. Militia, Your Worship?
Yes, Councillor Akpata.
And I would hope that should leadership provincially or federally decide to go 24 hours, Mr. Militia, that we would, of course, acquiesce and do our best to comply with the times to vaccinate our folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, what we're trying to do is develop a plan for the most extensive mass vaccination effort, and then based on an unlimited supply. We understand that that's an unrealistic expectation, but we're trying to develop that plan, and then as we can tailor that plan with the availability of the supply. So again, we are strictly a support function in some ways to the health unit. We follow their direction on how to set up the facility and when to set it up and things of that nature. So we are at their disposal, if you will, when it comes to that, but we are certainly ramping up for the maximum amount of distribution that we can, and we will do as much as we can when called upon by the health unit.
Thank you very much, sir. That's all, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Akpata and Mr. Militia. Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not so much a question, I guess this is a comment for Joe. I would like to personally thank you for the updates that you have been sending out to us and the communication you have been sending out to us. Specifically, the one that came this morning from General Hillier. Reason being is that, we all, try to follow the news the best we can, whether that be in the paper, whether that be on the computer, whether that be word of mouth. And, there's a lot of bad information out there. I won't even say misinformation. There's just a lot of things that have gone sideways. And I found his plan to be very direct and concise. The things that people are concerned about the overseas facility closing and retooling. He addressed all those things, and I felt very confident afterwards. And by you sharing that with us, I think shows a lot of faith in what's going on. So I just personally wanted to thank you for those updates.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. There's a lot of information out there, but you're 100% correct on what Mr. Militia sent out. That is factual information. So thank you. Any other council questions? Seeing none, statements by council members. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through you, this is just kind of an open comment. We have been receiving emails from the Red Cross Center for the blood donations, blood donor clinics. And if anybody cares to join me, I will be going there on Friday, February the 5th in the morning. So if you want to come and keep me company, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. Councillor Carrick.
Yes, if I could just take a second here. We had our ERCA general meeting, annual general meeting, and Mr. Tim Burney was, did the job acting as the chair and did a really good job. And we're looking forward to the rest of the year coming forward, and understanding that we're still dealing with a lot of high water levels, and always keep that on our radar because spring is coming. So let's just keep that in our forethoughts, and you guys keep up the good work, administration. Thank you.
Wow, what a way to start the year, all the compliments. Mr. Militia, don't come asking for a raise. Councillor Akpata.
Just again to the folks that ended up assisting our young people that broke through the ice, your worship. My children normally would be skating as well, whether it's at the Volmer or with their teams that they play. And when I heard about those folks going through the ice, my heart dropped, and I was worried that it would not end the way that it did. But I'm glad that the emergency services responded. And of course, I guess for our folks and for the public, it hasn't been cold enough. The ice looks inviting. The ponds look wonderful. We had a close call as a municipality, and let's keep everyone safe. And I realize it's sometimes hard to keep your young ones inside the house. I'm doing my best to keep mine constrained. But let's look at what happened and make sure that whatever ICE protocols are appropriate are done, and keep our folks and our young ones safe, your worship. And thanks to the first responders that assisted in making this incident work out positively.
Thank you, Councillor Akpata. Maybe at this time, it's a good time to invite Chief Sutton if he has any words to say about this.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the kind words, and I think the underlying message, as Councillor Akpata has indicated, is we are not in a situation where we have safe ice here. Unfortunately, due to our winter climate, it rarely is safe ice in this area of the province, but typically you would expect 3 to 4 inches of ice cover to be safe to walk on and do ice fishing and those kinds of activities. So as we know, we've had very few nights that have been what we would consider a hard freeze. And understanding that everybody is very anxious to find recreational outlets and activity and get out and enjoy the outdoors, we would caution people, particularly at this time of the year, that the ice is not safe until we get a really extended period of probably below -8 or -10 temperatures before you can expect the ice to be safe. So thank you for the comments. I know our police force responded as well. Pardon me. And we are very grateful for the outcome. It could have been worse, but I think it was a good wake-up call to everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton and Chief Sutton and Councillor Akpata for bringing that forward. Any other statements by council members? Reports from committees? Notices of motion. Confirmatory bylaw, first reading. Councillor Reno and Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor. That carries. Second reading, Councillor Carrick and Councillor Radicio Spagnolo, all in favor. That carries. Last final reading, Councillor Akpata and Councillor Desjardins, all in favor. That carries. Thank you, Council. Have a good evening, viewing audience. Until next meeting.